Hello and welcome back once again. Now, very special today because, as you know, last time we have done one questions by the lovely Tina, and she's going to do another session today. Now, I have no idea what she's going to ask me, so be prepared for shocks. I should be prepared for shocks, perhaps. So, hello and welcome, Tina.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. All the
Good.
better for having you here asking questions.
Good. Right, we've got some more questions for you today. We'll start off with your childhood memories. What are the best and what are the worst?
Oh dear, what a thing to ask me out of the blue. My worst childhood memories, you see, I go back to before the war, and children's a completely different way of bringing up children today. In those days, children were seen but not heard.
Yeah.
And I can remember,
I had that one.
I can remember sitting, well, not sitting, but crouching outside the dining room door or sitting room door. My parents had visitors, and of course the children were pushed out.
Oh.
And I can remember sitting there at the door, very naughty, listening to what was going on in the sitting room.
I can imagine you doing that.
But I had a curious mind even then. But that's the difference. But you know, it's good and bad to it, because children today are very bright, and with all the modern things, their brains are working early, and it's first class. But they've lost a lot of the innocence of childhood. In my day, children were innocent, and they lived a different life. And as you say, they were expected to be seen but not heard. And I can remember my wife with our first children, wrapping them up tightly, putting them in the cot, and laying them face downwards so they wouldn't cry. You know. But now they allow them to cry, make the noise. There's good and bad for both sides.
Right.
Well, I hope that answers it.
Yeah.
And you know that you asked for what was the
What was
worst,
the best
and what was the best?
worst?
What was the best of my childhood? Let me try and think. Now that is a difficult one, because a childhood spans a long time, and you see, I remember. I think the best thing that I can remember was that when I was about 7. Now, what was that big racing track in London? I can't remember it. My poor old brain's gone. But it was a big racing track. And I belonged to the Scouts. In those days, there was no television, very little radio. I had a crystal set, so shows you how far back I go. But I belonged to the group in the church hall, and the Scouts, I think it was. And we had this racing derby. We made up cars with pedals, and we went racing, and they picked me. I don't know why they picked me to actually drive the car. So that was a tremendous thing to be able to say that I'd driven a car at this place.
Oh, brilliant. Right, schooling. What was schooling like?
Well, schooling, in those days, they used to have what they termed an elementary school, and this is where anybody could go. And I can't remember what age you could go to it from, but they expected by the age of 5 you had to be able to read and write. Now that nowadays would be, you've got children of 10 who can't read and write, but by 5 you had to, and you went to the elementary school literally from the age of 4 or 5 to 11. At 11 you could take a scholarship or free place for exams, and if you were sufficiently bright, you could go on somewhere further. Otherwise, you stayed in the elementary school, and it was very sensible in those days, because today everything's the same, all coming up to a degree, whereas they don't realise some people want to be technicians, so they're going to do technical things, and they don't need the same education as somebody who's going to become a doctor or a chemist or something like that. And in those days it was always separated, so you either went to a technical school at the age of 11, or you went to a different one. As it happened, I won a scholarship, and I was able to go to an expensive private school. In those days it was called Clapham College, and I went to Clapham College, where I had the opportunity of sort of moving forward and furthering. Yeah. But it was a much better system, though I say it. Today I think they're trying to make everybody level.
It's a bit higgledy-piggledy at the moment, I think.
People aren't level because people want to do different things. A person who's going to be a pharmacist doesn't need the same training and as somebody who's going to be a carpenter. And in those days they had the technical colleges, and the technical colleges used to teach carpentry and plumbing and all the trades, which was excellent. It's just what was needed.
Like nowadays, they're now going to bring into school how to save money.
Really?
And look after your money, which I think is good.
Well, that's good.
You know, they should have done that when I was at school.
We just didn't have any money.
No, exactly. Right. The Second World War, what was that like?
Oh, the Second World War, that was a tremendous experience, really, because everybody was involved with it. It's not something like wars today. It's somewhere in a remote country. You're aware of it and you follow it in the news or on the television. But the Second World War, you actually were part of it, because I can remember as soon as it announced the war, the sirens went off. There was this tremendous, very frightening. And we went outside. There they were with balloons, letting the balloons up to stop the planes coming over, the anti-aircraft guns. But of course I was fairly young then. I was 26, 36. I was 12 or 13, and so I was evacuated. I was at school, and I can remember us all going, taken down to the railway station.
Were you excited a bit, or?
Well, we seemed to take it for granted, strangely enough. We didn't think about it, because I can remember at the age of 12, now that isn't old, is it?
No, but...
cycling from East Grinstead, which is about 30 miles from London, cycling from East Grinstead to London with air raids going on. And I remember coming back from London to East Grinstead, the air raids were so bad, I thought, well, I can't keep cycling in this. And by the side of the road were some great big pipes, you know, the earthenware pipes. And so I got the bike, and I pushed the bike into this pipe on the side of the road, and I got in with it myself. What did I do? Wrapped up my coat, put it under my head, and went to sleep. And in the morning, of course, the air raid was over, and I was able to cycle on. But it's a different attitude, because I mean, you wouldn't let a 12 or 13-year-old do that today.
No way.
It was good. Next question, please.
What about rationing with food? What was that like?
Well, people wouldn't be able to abide it today. If you think, I can't remember what the butter ration or the sugar ration.
I couldn't do without my butter.
The butter, you were allowed just a little tiny blob, and of course everybody, all houses, they put all their different little bits of blobs of butter on separate plates, so that people only use their own ration.
Too right.
and it was terrible, really. And no sweets. I can remember when sweets came off the ration. I couldn't believe it. This was after the war. You know, go and saw a sweet shop there, and we could go in and buy sweets without a ration book.
I bet it was lovely to do that.
But mind you, it's initiative. You see, when the war started, or after the war, during the war, there was the ration books, and at that time, you see, today, when everybody wants money, they just go on benefits and what's. In those days, we didn't have benefits, or virtually they didn't exist. And so I can remember talking about ration books. I thought, well, what can I do to make a bit of money? And I thought, well, the ration books. So I went along to the local post office, and I got a piece of cardboard, and I made a little cover for the ration book, and I drew out all the adverts on it, and I went to the local post office, or what it was. I said, if you hand out the ration books, would you like to give away free ration book covers? Oh yes, because that was something free in those days.
Yeah.
And so then I went round the local shops, and I said, now you can have a little advert on here. I can't remember, but I charged something very little, £2 or £3 for an advert on the ration book cover. And somewhere, the only thing was, I suddenly found that the end, they slipped the ration book into it, and the edges got worn. So I was so pleased. I found a little machine, and it was a little hand on it, turned it like this, and it had a tape, and it put this tape on the edge of the ration book covers. And so I used to sit
Keep you a
there
bit
all
longer.
night putting these edges on the ration book cover. But I made a penny or two to keep the wheels turning.
That's good. The wartime and unwanted children, what was that like?
Well, now this is one of the saddest things out, and in fact,
can imagine.
just recently, I've been seeing in the papers a lot of these children. They were shipped out to Australia,
I've
to
been hearing
Canada, and where they were abused.
I heard that on the news.
Terrible thing.
That is.
And this was where I had a wonderful wife. You know, I was married for 65 years,
Yeah.
and she was an angel. And we lost our very first baby, and of course she was aware of all these other children, unwanted children, and I don't know whether we ought to answer that.
No, that'd be okay. I'm trying to ignore her.
Ignore it. All these unwanted children, she was aware of them, and as we lost our first one, she said we ought to have one of these unwanted children to save them being shipped out to Australia. And what was so bad, they had children's homes with 400 children and 600 children in them. They used to have sort of like a big estate covered with cottages, and in each cottage there was a house mother with about 10 or 14 children. And it worked quite well, Mark, it wasn't bad. But all these unwanted children, and the trouble was, if you had a family of perhaps 4 or 5, or 2 or 3 even, the moment they got to the age of 5, they would ship the eldest one out to Australia or New Zealand or Canada, and the family would be broken up and never see one another again.
Awful.
So it was awful. So when we lost our first one, my wife said, well, we ought to have one of these children to replace it. And of course, we got in touch with the local authorities, and they said, well, everybody wants little babies, because we wanted a baby to replace the baby we lost. And they said, but nobody wants, it was baby girl we wanted. Everybody wants baby girls, but nobody wants the baby boys.
Oh.
So we said, all right, we'll have a baby boy. And they said, well, everybody wants the baby boys, but nobody wants the older boys.
Hint, hint.
So no hint to it. But so anyway, to cut a long story short, a great joy to us. We ended up with our eldest boy. We had him at the age of 7, I think it was, and he's now in his 70s, and he came over from Australia to see us. He comes over every year to see us. Wonderful son he's been, and so he's been a great joy to us, and one of the nicest things that ever happened to us. So
he probably feels the same way.
well, let's hope so. Well, this is what it's all about, isn't it? But that started it off. The local authorities saying, here's a couple of suckers. Every time they came to us and said, well, look, there's a girl here. She's got to be shipped off to Canada if nobody has her, and she's got 4 brothers and sisters. And so my wife being an angel, and we were married for 65 years, which isn't bad.
They latched onto you, didn't they?
They did. And so she said, well, yes, well, we'll have them. So because we didn't have a house big enough at that time, the administrator for Westminster Cathedral, we were living in Seaford at the time in Sussex, and the parish priest got in touch with the administrator of Westminster Cathedral, who had somebody had left a great big mansion to them, and they were using it for holidays for the priests and from the cathedral. And the administrator was a wonderful man. He became the bishop later on. He said, well, you can have that house now. Nobody would do that today.
No, not today. You're very lucky.
Shows you the problem that was with the children.
But you've done a lot of work for them, that's why, you know.
But anyway, so
grateful.
He let us have, no, they weren't, but he let us have this house, and I can remember sitting there with him and my wife. We were having lunch, and our first family came in, and they were the 5 of them. They were lovely, and we've been blessed with them ever since. Unfortunately, some of that family have died, but we've still got so many from all over the world.
What were the American soldiers like in the wartime?
Oh, don't tell me about American soldiers. The question should have been, what were the English girls like?
Yeah.
Which would have been a better question. You see, it was a terrible temptation.
I can
for them,
imagine.
if you can imagine. Everything's short supply. Nobody got anything. Girls couldn't get stockings for love nor money. And in those days, of course, the silk stockings were considered the absolute nylons. My
The
word,
bee's knees.
they're just coming out because before the war it was silk stockings. Then in the war they brought out the nylon stockings, and of course the girls did go mad with the American soldiers because there they were, loads of money. In England there was no money about. They had loads of sweets, loads of cigarettes, loads of everything, and of course nylon stockings. And so you can't blame the girls. They enjoyed themselves, and they had a wonderful time.
But were they friendly?
Oh, they were more than friendly.
Too friendly.
They were more than friendly. That's an innocent.
I don't know, do I? I'm an innocent party here.
You would have enjoyed the war with the American soldiers.
I was just a twinkle in my mother's eye. Oh, brilliant.
No, they were, and the American soldiers were great. And of course, you forget that all our men had gone, they were overseas or fighting or what have you, and all they had in the streets were the American soldiers. So you can't blame the girls, really. I mean, but and we don't realise the number of American English weddings there were at that time.
Yeah, children became
Yes.
half
and
English,
of course,
half American.
After the war, this is what I was saying, we had all these children, unwanted children, because of course the English soldiers came back from the war. They didn't want to have anything to do with the child which was being born in the meantime, but to an with an American father.
Oh.
So it was a great problem. But there we are. That's I don't know how time is going. It's
right. I'd like to know what advice you'd give to children of today.
My advice to children today is to learn as much as you can, because we've got an amazing world and we're on the threshold of incredible things. And I mean, nobody would know today. I mean, I can remember the first mobile phone. In fact, I had one, and it was as big as an ordinary phone. It was in a leather case, and it had a strap on the shoulder. And I had a stall in the Ideal Home at Olympia for 3 weeks. And in those days, because there were no mobile phones, every stall had to have its own separate telephone line, because they had to do their telephone contact with the world. And I remember walking down the big aisle in Olympia with my telephone, my portable telephone, hanging from my shoulder like that. And everybody, oh look, there's a telephone. Now,
they'd laugh at you.
Five-year-olds have got phones which are quite incredible, you know.
Well, that was my last question actually. I was going to say to you, you like your gadgets, but do you think that a lot of them have come out far too quick?
No,
I do.
You do. No, the quicker they come, the better. I think they're amazing.
Yeah, and, I thought you might say that.
We're so lucky. Well, at any rate, I hope we've interested you a little bit. There's a few memories, and unfortunately, these things get forgotten. And I mean, just think back when a time when there's no television, radios are expensive and scarce, and we amused ourselves. Everybody went to the library. We used to get 3 books a week from the library, if not more. We used to have all the meetings and community things going on, which we haven't got today. Churches were packed, and so times change, and I think they're sometimes for the better. Thank you for looking, and we look forward to speaking to you next week. God bless you all. Take care, and bye-bye.